Welcome, folks. Today is Saturday, the 5th of December, and that today we'll be talking about the Satipatthana. Now, the first thing that I want to say is that when we talk about the Satipatthana, when people think about Satipatthana, they think about Satipatthana. That's almost like the way of saying that when we talk about our collection of tools, we're talking instead about the tool case or the tool set. And that the better way of thinking about the Satipatthana is to divide it out into each one of the tools rather than as a collection or a group. Now, the Pali word patana actually comes from the same root word as we would have in English for the word pedal, like on a bicycle, or maybe pedestal, which actually is a form of a footing. And so the word foot and the word pedal are pedestrian, someone who was walking on foot. This word patana is used that way in the sense of the footing or the foundation or the base, a base for existence. Now, we can also think of these as the four elements. Now, in modern physics, we use the word element, and we've got 92 and counting. But in the time of the Buddha, the four base elements was liquid, earth or solid, gas, and fire. These were the four basic elements. And so when we talk about the Satipatthana, we're talking about the four base elements or the four basic elements to which we will apply sati. Now, there is a large group of people in the West, especially, who think that the Buddha, the entire teachings that they have for the Buddha, normally under the realm of insight meditation or vipassana, this group is highly attached to these four foundations of mindfulness, not recognizing that they are, let us say, incidental to what the Buddha actually taught. They think that it's the exact frame of reference, that everything that the Buddha taught was taught within these four foundations of mindfulness, rather than understanding that the real Dhamma that the Buddha taught is to be seen within each one of these four foundations. Ivan, does that make sense for you? That we apply the actual teachings of the Buddha within each one of these four foundations.
Yeah, that makes much more sense. Yeah, it's very simple. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that these are the things that we're going to apply the Eightfold Noble Path to, starting with sati, to remember. Okay, so now that we've got that down, we can say that we're going to remember to pay attention to the body. We're going to remember to pay attention to the feelings. We're going to remember to pay attention to a certain aspect of the mind that the Buddha and in Pali refer to as sita, which is not all of what Western systems consider the mind. And the sita we'll get to and talk about it in detail. And then the fourth one is called the Dhamma. Now, in the Pali, we have the body as Kaya Nupassana, the feelings are Vedana Nupassana, the mind is Sita Nupassana, and then the objects of the mind are Dhamma nupassana. Now, what we mean by the word nupassana is that which we're going to be paying attention to. Nupassana actually has to do with a passage or a movement too. And it also has the quality of moving to it and staying there in the sense of becoming passive. So nupassana is actually very similar to the word vipassana, which is often used in certain groups of meditation. But the Buddha didn't use the word vipassana, he used the word nupassana. So we're talking about nupassana in the sense of investigation. Now, vipassana is almost always referred to as insight, and the word insight has to do more with the conclusion of the investigation. That you look and you look and then you look and then you realize something, or you wake up to something, or you have the result of the investigation. And that the Buddha didn't use the word that way, nor should we think of it as realizing something. That in fact, last Sunday, one of the students asked the question of, well, what does a Sotapan realize? Which means he's got it all upside down. Because the realization or the knowledge or the investigation and the results of the investigation is what causes him to become active enough in the Dhamma, so immersed in the Dhamma, that he would be referred to by the term Sotapan. Sotapan doesn't realize something. Sotapan actually has all the knowledge that he needs to do the job. And what is the job is to remove the defilements. Now, you've heard me talk before about that the Buddha, what he actually taught was the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths, especially the first Noble Truth, is the most important one. And that is that dukkha exists. And why is it most important? Is because until the student or anyone can see the dukkha, then they can't do anything about it. An example is that when they don't see it, but they feel uncomfortable, then they'll blame something else, the outside world. They'll blame something uh, somewhere else. The devil made me do it, not recognizing that they're the devil. And so, with that, understanding the Four Noble Truths, we understand that there are certain causes for the dukkha. And that when we remove those causes, there is a state where there is no suffering, there is no disappointments, there is satisfaction. Now, satisfaction I'm going to define as a resting place, but that the resting place has to be prepared. Because if, for instance, if you sit down in a chair and that chair's got a shoe in it, you can't really rest in that chair sitting on that shoe, because especially if it's a an army boot or a snow boot or an ice skater's I don't know what they call it, skate. Sitting down on the set of roller skates is not going to be comfortable. You're not going to rest there. You have to prepare the place where you're going to finally rest into a state of satisfaction. So that's the third noble truth. And there is a method that we can use to prepare the chair. And that method to prepare the chair is called the Eightfold Noble Path. Now, the Buddha's actual instructions and methods for the practice of the Eightfold Noble Path and the development of the Eightfold Noble Path, he refers to as anapanasati. And that the way that we talk about the Eightfold Noble Path is the way that it's specified in Sutta number 117, the Great 40, in the Majjhima Nikaya, and then 118 is the Anapanasati Sutta. These two things go closely together. Now, where does the Satipatthana come in? Well, the Buddha in the Anapanasati Sutta says that we practice Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana. We practice Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana. And a lot of people will read that and says, okay, well, I'm quitting here on this Anapanasati Sutta and I'm going to go over to the Satipatthana Sutta and we're going to stay there forever. But then it further says is that we practice the Anapanasati Sutta for the Anapanasati practice for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana, but that then is practiced not as an end itself, but for the fulfillment of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Now, the funny part is that actually there's several things. You could say, in fact, that the Anapanasati Sutta has a whole lot of stuff that the Satipatthana Sutta does not have, and the Satipatthana Sutta has a whole lot of stuff that the Anapanasati Sutta does not have, almost to the point that they look contradictory rather than complementary. And that one of the qualities is that the Sambhojana, or the 7 factors of enlightenment, is in the Anapanasati Sutta, but that the Satipatthana Sutta does not have any mention, well, just a short mention of the 7 factors of enlightenment, but not in the way that it's lined up in the Anapanasati Sutta. But there's more to it than that, and that is that the 7 factors of enlightenment are practiced for the fulfillment of knowledge and deliverance. Now, this knowledge and deliverance is referred to many places. It's actually referred to in both the Anapanasati Sutta and the Great 40, which talks about the Eightfold Noble Path, but it's mentioned many places. And what that actually means is that it's a 2-step process. And I'll use the example of cleaning your toilet. I mean, the one in your house. And that is that you have to know the knowledge of the dirt. You have to know the knowledge of the equipment that's going to remove the dirt. You have to have the knowledge of how the toilet operates. And only then can you become delivered from the crap in the toilet. We have to have full knowledge of what we're doing. Okay. So another example would be that some child could sit down at a sewing machine with the idea that he's going to sew a shirt, and he winds up getting nowhere because he has no knowledge about how to do it. The same thing is true. In fact, this happened to me when I was a teenager, is that I had a flathead Ford, 1952, I think, and that I let it run out of oil. Not a good idea. The oil light came on, and I says, well, I'm going to drive it home and then I'll put oil in it. Not a good idea. So I destroyed the engine. Well, I didn't destroy it, but it needed repair. The destruction came is when I put it up on a hoist and took the engine apart with the idea of fixing it, not recognizing that I didn't have the knowledge to take the engine apart correctly. Because the idea for mechanics is that you have to remember where every part came out, because when you put it back together, you got to put that part exactly back where it was. You can't use other bolts and pistons rearranged, etc. That the old car has worn into a certain way, and if you put the wrong pistons in the wrong place, then one of them is going to slap around and the other is going to be too tight. So you have to be able to take the engine apart correctly in order to be able to get it back together correctly. This is an important point for the Dhamma, because a lot of people think that, in fact, they are going to start removing the defilements immediately without even knowing how to do it. Because you hear a lot about that. Oh, well, that's a hindrance, that's a defilement, get rid of it, without even knowing how to do that. And so the whole quality that the Buddha is putting out here is that we practice the anapanasati according to the Eightfold Noble Path for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana, so that the Satipatthana in its fulfillment will fulfill the Sambhojana. And there's a point here, and that is that the Sambhojana looks, and when you investigate closely, it really looks exactly like the Eightfold Noble Path. In other words, we practice the Eightfold Noble Path by practicing Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana. But we practice the Satipatthana for the fulfillment of the 7 factors of enlightenment, which is actually the fulfillment of the Eightfold Noble Path. In other words, we get it correct. And once we get the Eightfold Noble Path correctly done, then the correct version, the one that's already got the skills needed built into it, would be the base for which we now have the path straightened out correctly. The 7 factors of enlightenment are there, which, now that we know this correctly, we now have the tools, the knowledge for actually removing the defilements. So a lot of the teaching of the Buddha has to do with the preparation of gathering up and gaining the knowledge in order to do the job. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you have to practice 10 years or so to get the knowledge before you can start doing the deliverance. That, in fact, an example would be that all you need to do is learn how to hold the screwdriver correctly in order to remove the screw. And if you're not using the screwdriver correctly, you're not going to remove the screw. So the knowledge can come quickly enough for each of the items, but if you're not doing it correctly, it's not going to work. You're not going to remove that screw. Even though you've got the right screwdriver, you don't know how to use it correctly. So actually, even though the actual teachings of the Buddha is quite simple, it requires some skill development, some knowledge about how to use the tools. And now let's look at the tools. Remember, in the beginning, I referred to as the Satipatthana as a tool case. The Satipatthana is actually now going to be the tools, the base that we're going to operate from. And that is that the body, the feelings, the citta, there's a certain part of the mind, and then the mental objects that we have. Now, an important point is that in the Anapanasati Sutta, in its description of each one of these 4 foundations of mindfulness, it has the phrase that Bodhi translated, correctly enough, is thus one trains oneself, which means that the practicing of the Satipatthana is a practice in order to gain skills at doing something. And if we're developing the skills, then that means that we are gaining some value from it. So let's take them one at a time. The first foundation is of the body. Now, the body has breathing in long, out long is the first item, and then breathing in short and out short. Now, there's some actual problems with the word not in and out, but long and short. A better way of looking at it is that often the short breath in time frame is actually longer in time period than the long breath. So long and short is not the actual kind of words that we want to use, but we're talking about the kind of breath that we can control so that we can get a lot of air in. And the long breath would better be called deep breath, to where the short breath would be then better called a relaxed breath. Does this make sense to you, Brett? Long breath to get the air in. Okay,
Yes,
go ahead.
Dhammarato. Yes, it does.
All right. I know that Dhamma has been teaching, and in fact, at one time I've done it, and in fact, on videos, I have the short breath as energetic, and yet that's not the way that it would be practiced. I'm talking about energetic in the sense of panting like you're out of breath. But this is not actually the way that it should be used. But we were all under the impression of various translators who would translate it as long and short. But thanks to Alexander Hippel, he actually uncovered a very ancient Chinese version that's very well known to have come from the time of the Buddha, where it's described better. There's a better definition of it. And so that heaving in and out kind of short breath is not what the Buddha recommended, but rather that we breathe in long so that we can relax the body, because we've got it energized, and we also have all of the various pollutants like carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, by the way, mixed with water, is what is referred to as carbonic acid. You've probably heard of acid rain, when the atmosphere has so much carbon dioxide in it that when it rains, the rainwater is acidic. Well, the blood gets acidic also. And that when the blood gets acidic, that means then that it's operating inefficiently, and we will get drowsy, we will yawn, we will get tired easy, etc., like that. And so we use the deep breath to get the body conditioned so that the blood is purified and we got good oxygen going to the brain. But these are the first two items, the long breath and the relaxed breath. And then the next two is actually the more important ones, and that is to get to know the body, to examine the body. And this is where the skills come in. It's a skill to learn to examine and to know your body. And then further, it's a skill to relax the body. And these are the first four items in the Anapanasati Sutta, to where the Satipatthana Sutta misses the point generally by talking about all kinds of things that can be done with the body, including charnel ground meditations and other things like this that actually have nothing to do with the actual practice. So the next part is the Vedana, or the feelings. And so the first question that comes up for people is, well, when do I do which? And the answer is one by one as they occur. With generally the idea is the first thing that occurs is the breath. If you can't get a breath going, you're going to die pretty soon. And so all of this is nothing. So the first item would be is to take a deep breath, take a relaxed breath. But then the Vedana becomes highly, let us say, skill related. It's so skill related that we need to develop other skills first. But the skills would be the piti and the sukha. Now, let me define sukha first. Sukha is actually being in a state of satisfaction. And then piti would be a great big satisfaction. All right. So we could also say that piti is noisy satisfaction, and that sukha is quiet satisfaction. It's almost like a note that starts off crescendos and then comes back quiet again. This is how we actually practice it. We can also say the noisy part is the jubilee, the enjoyment, the celebration, the noisy part of the celebration. Wow, I can do this. That's the noisy part. And then the sukha is the quiet. Relax. Now, both of these are skills to be developed. This is actually now we're talking about step 5 and 6. But there's more to the Vedana than that, and that is the next 2 points is to begin to see, to not begin to see, but to investigate and investigate and investigate until you see how deeply related the Vedana is to both the mind and the body. That, for instance, if the mind gets excited, then the feelings will become excited. If the feelings are excited, they excite the body. They're highly interconnected. And once you see this interconnection, you can quiet that interconnection down. Those people are really out of control in the sense that their noisy feelings become noisy all over the place rather than allowing them to become quiet. Now, let's talk about sita for a little bit. The sita is not all of the mind, and in fact, in the Pali, there's another part that's quite well known, and it is known as Manu. Now, we can think of Manu from the word man or the word human as the better part of the mind. That which can investigate, that which can see clearly, that which can put things together. That's where your wisdom lies. The sita is much more a primitive part of the mind. It's where memories are stored, where attitudes are stored, where fear arises. We can almost think of it as the reptilian part of the mind. I don't know why they called it the reptilian part, but the scientists say that the reptilian mind actually closely corresponds in shape to that part of the mind that a snake has. It's all of its mind, or a crocodile. It's the reptilian part, because all living creatures, you could also think of it as a bird mind, except that birds have a little bit more smarts. So they've got a little bit of Manu also. But there's also a third kind of mind, and that the third kind of mind the Buddha would refer to as the attaching part of the mind, especially attachments to language skills, the modern psychotherapist and neuroscientists refer to it as the mammalian part of the brain, or the temporal part of the brain, the mid cortex, where we not only store language, but we also store rules, rituals, the way things are supposed to be. And so often within the human mind, you're going to have the reptilian part of the mind, which Freud referred to as id, and Eric Berne referred to it as the child. So the child part of the mind is often in conflict with the rules, the supposed tos, and the language, and all of that. The verbal part of the mind, which Berne, by the way, refers to as a parent. And so the human is often at conflict between the parent and the child. The child wants this, and the parent says, no, you can't have that. You've got to go do this over here. And the child will rebel, or it'll go along and feel bad. And so we have these three parts of the mind. We have the frontal cortex, or the thinking part, the manu. We have the citta, which is the child portion of the mind. And then we have the middle cortex. And that, surprise, surprise, in the Satipatthana, there is no mention of the manu. There is relatively little reference to the mid cortex, but it does refer to and talk about the citta. Now, the citta in the Satipatthana Sutta is referred to in several ways, in the sense of the development, or the skills that have to be developed, is to know what state of mind that you're in. So you can say that the adult, or the manu, is just seeing and figuring out, etc., like that, but that the citta is the source of the feelings. And you could also say that the citta is where the sankharas are stored. The sankharas are our habits and our formations and our concoctions, and all of that is stored. So this is the part that needs the most training. This is the part of the mind that is untrained and unskilled, and that it causes feelings. So you can say then that the citta is actually where all of the stuff is stored that gives us all of our troubles. It also is the source of our belief systems. And our belief systems often get in the way of dealing with reality. So you could say then, where does the self lie? The self would lie there in the child ego state, and it doesn't lie there all the time. It only arises when we attach to things, or when we want things, or when we are, let us say, developing concepts, etc., like that. And so this is the part of the mind that actually needs to be trained. And that's why we put it in part of the Satipatthana, is because we're going to train this part of the mind. Because if we can't train this part of the mind, then we have no possibility of training the feelings. And if the feelings are not going to be trained, then how in the world are we ever going to get the body to actually relax? And so these things work interchangeably with one another. So the last one, which we'll talk about a little bit, seems to be the one where things really get messed up between the Anapanasati Sutta and the Satipatthana Sutta, because the Anapanasati Sutta goes directly to the issue, to where the Satipatthana Sutta talks about it in the sense of features or time structuring. Okay. And that one of the things that is mentioned in the Satipatthana Sutta is the hindrances. So is the 7 factors of enlightenment, but so is the Four Noble Truths and a great long exposition of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. And we can take that as a way of looking at how we can structure our time. So the way that we structure our time is either in normal situations, the mind is occupied with thoughts that are hindrances to us feeling good. Or we can substitute those kind of thoughts with the wholesome thoughts that are associated with the Dhamma, the Eightfold Noble Path, the Four Noble Truths, the actual teachings of the Buddha, and other things that are wholesome. So this is the Satipatthana. It has hindrances and it has path factors. But in the Anapanasati Sutta, the Dhammanupassana is structured completely differently in the sense that the Satipatthana has things that are, let us say, kind of longish term, days, weeks, months, etc., to where in the Anapanasati Sutta, it's very quick. It's always right here, right now, immediate. And there is where it talks about that things are changing very quickly. And anybody who has done any much investigation of the objects and content of their mind, they think that they call it thinking. Okay, I use 2 different definitions of the word think. That's a problematic word, the word thinking, because it's many different kinds of activities. So one of the kinds of thinking that we do is called discursive thought. And we will do discursive thought or thinking, which would be thinking about how things ought to be, thinking about concepts, etc., like that. And that we normally use language for this. But in fact, when we think in forms of concepts, we often go shorthand instead of going through all the various little steps to get from A to B to C to D to E. We go straight from A to E because the mind goes very quickly like that. So if we can begin to look at the various steps in the detail, we can see those missing steps that bring on conclusions that have, let us say, bad connections, that A does not lead to E. That in fact A will stay A, but it will keep cycling back and forth over and over and over again. This is where the Anapanasati Sutta talks about it in the form of anicca. The mind is active. It keeps changing up, down, and every time something goes down, that which is up dies. And every time it goes up, that which was down dies. So we need to see not only the ups and the downs, but we can see that when the up is up, there's no down. It died. And when we go down, we can see that the up is no longer there. It died too. So this is allowing us, if we can see that samsara, we can see that connection going up, down, in the mind. We no longer attach to it. But generally, the way that the humans ordinarily think is that when the mind goes up, they go up too and attach to it. And then when it goes down, they go down too and attach to it. And so the human keeps dragged back and forth between up and down and up and down. But when we can see it as it is, that up, down can be there, but we're not attached to it. And so we don't go up, down with it. That is something that we let go of, we relinquish. We're no longer interested in what the mind is doing at that level. Yes, go ahead, Ivan.
Isn't that the fourth tetrad of Anapanasati? Like seeing there's no ownership to all of this. That's the up, the down. Like it dies.
Yes, that's in fact the major point of the relinquishment. And the relinquishment can also be thought of as to throwing it back or throwing it out. It's not me, it's not mine, it's just a thought. But our whole society teaches us that your thoughts are your thoughts. If you have that thought, that's who you are. And the reality is no, a thought's just a thought, is not who you are. There's no reason for you to attach to a thought. Now, how do we do this all in practice? Well, the way that we practice is not according to the Satipatthana Sutta, nor is it according to the Anapanasati Sutta. The correct way to practice is by the Eightfold Noble Path. That's an important point. So, in the Great 40, where the Buddha talks about that we remember to investigate and then make a change with right noble effort. We investigate, we make a change with right noble effort. Okay, so the three work together. They work together in the sense that we remember to look, and when we look and see that that's a hindrance, we can change that into a wholesome thought. Where we apply that to the Anapanasati Sutta is that when we remember, we can immediately take a deep breath while we're looking at what the mind was doing, and then we can change that, and by changing it, we can relax. Now, much of what we can say, and I mentioned it before, is in the Sita. What we're investigating is not necessarily the thoughts or the actions of the mind, the Dhammanupassana, the thoughts that go up, down, is not necessarily what we're going to be investigating. The better thing to investigate almost immediately is the state that the mind is in, the Sita's state of mind. Now, normally, the state of mind that most people are in is in the state of being a victim. Now, the hindrance of doubt shows a state of victimhood in the sense of, I don't know, but I need to know. Who can I get to help me to understand? So the need to understand is a state of mind. And so instead of mulling over, well, do I do this or do I do that or do I do this other thing or what's to do and what's to do is the way that most people will see this. And the point about investigation is to see this activity in the mind, can see this doubt, can see this, in fact, victimhood that causes all of this stuff. And so that's what we want to gladden. The gladdening of the mind is not part of the Dhammanupassana. The gladdening of the mind is part of the Sita Nupassana, which means that when we gladden the mind, we're actually changing the mind state, mostly from the state of being a victim into being a non-victim, maybe even call it a winner. Call it being on top of the world rather than being buried under the world. And so we begin to, by gladdening mind, brightening the mind, lightening the mind begins to float up. It's not heavy anymore. It becomes light. And so that lightweightness then rises to the top. And we can think of that then as more of a winner's attitude. Now, this is an important point that's made in Sutta number 48 in the Kosambian Sutta and the Majjhima Nikaya. And that state is that once the student can see that these hindrances, these thoughts, these obstructions that are in the mind can be changed. Not only can they be changed, but the student has the ability to change it. In other words, he's got a new attitude. The attitude is, I'm no longer buried under my shit. I can rise right on top of it. What that means is that we can begin to see things the way that they actually are, rather than being buried under our own view of the world. Now, this state that I'm talking about, this ability to see that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, no matter what kind of hindrances, no matter what kind of contents are there, the real issue is the change of attitude, the change of the mind, to brighten the mind, to gladden the mind, actually to make the mind exalted. And when I use the word exalted, I'm talking about on top of it all. You become the champion. I can do this. Okay. This attitude then is what we then go to actually begin to change the feelings. So this gladdening of the mind is not actually just changing the thoughts that we have, but the thoughts that we have of gladdening the mind has the quality of actually changing the attitude, changing the state of mind, so that the state of mind that we're in is in the state of mind of being okay. Because if we have that state of mind of being okay, then we can begin to change the feelings directly. And as we change the feelings and gain sukha through the skill of developing sukha, is also by using the correct language. In other words, the Dhammanupassana, or the thoughts that we're changing them from unwholesome thoughts into wholesome thoughts. And the wholesome thoughts would be, everything is okay. This is the Dhamma. We've got this made. And that begins then to bring on a state of safe and secure. I caution against the word fearless, because fearlessness is not real fearlessness. It's courage in the face of fear or danger. The reality is that there is no danger. The reality is that the danger was created in the mind, the unwholesome mind, the hindered mind. And when we begin to change our attitude, that will help us feel like there is no danger, there is safety, there is security. And when we're practicing with the body, to relax the body and to make the body comfortable, that fits in. So the mind and the feelings and the body and the mind's objects all work together as a group. But that doesn't mean that we can discard the individual items and say, oh, we've just got a group here. No, we have to use each tool correctly, rather than saying, oh, I've got a box of tools and that's all. No, a box of tools is not going to give you any value. You got to use these tools correctly, one at a time, and interchangeably. So sometimes you have to take the socket wrench out because the screwdriver in your hand doesn't take the bolt off. So you got to change the tools. And you have to know when to change the tools. And that, by the way, is part of the skill development, is to know which tool to use for which job that you've got to do, so that you can brighten the mind and change your attitude, change your state of mind, and that then will help you to change your feelings, so that you can change the feelings from being safe and secure and comfortable to that magic button we call what? What's the magic button, Ivan? Satisfaction. Now, why
Okay.
is that the magic button? The magic button, satisfaction, is because this is the state that the mind gets into out of dukkha, out of dissatisfaction. This is, in fact, the third noble truth. Now, someone practicing correctly, the first time that they practice, they can practice the Eightfold Noble Path and see the dukkha, see the unwholesome state in their mind, see the hindrance, take a deep breath, relax, and throw that thought out and says, I can do this, I can change my mind, and he can gain the noble path within 10 seconds of the first time he practices. The Buddha teaches a direct path. This is not a gradual path that you have to develop this skill and that other skill over there before you make the first step. Oh no, the skill development has to do with because you did it correctly the first time. You don't develop skills by doing it wrong. When you're doing it wrong, you develop bad skills that don't work. No, the skill development is the practice of over and over again of doing it correctly. Wow, this is an important point. And so if we practice correctly the very first time, then we'll get results immediately the very first time. Wow, what a relief it is. And so let's use the example of we just got an email from the boss. We haven't opened it yet. We just know that it's from the boss. And many people say, oh no, there's an email from the boss. And then we can start to practice. Wait a minute. It's an email. It's not a knock on the door. I don't have to answer it right now. I can take a rest. I can relax right now. I don't have to do it right now. I can rest. I can take a deep breath and I can relax and I can feel very good, comfortable, and satisfied. Now, I ask you this question. Karwan, I'll ask it to you directly. Which is better, to answer an email that you got from the boss when you're all upset about the fact that you got an email from the boss? Or is it better to relax and feel comfortable and joyful and happy and satisfied and then answer the email?
Well, of course, it makes sense to do it when we are satisfied, but unfortunately, sometimes, it is so juicy to answer things when we are triggered, and
Yes, we get anxious, we get uptight, we get into a hurry, we get anxiety, and the ignorant belief that we all have is that, oh, I can eliminate this anxiety by answering the email. So let me go answer the email and then I won't have the anxiety anymore. And then you post the email and then you'll think, wait a minute, I said the wrong thing. And the anxiety doesn't go away by answering the email. This is why this is called the direct method. The direct method is go get your satisfaction first and then answer the email. Go get your satisfaction first. This is the direct method. And if you get your direct satisfaction, you'll probably do a much better job of answering that email. And while you're answering or while you're reading it and you get uptight, why continue to read it uptight? Why don't you set that email aside and come back and gain your composure, gain your satisfaction yet again? And you keep practicing till you can read emails satisfied. You keep practicing until you can answer or not answer emails while you're still in a good state. You're still happy. You're still satisfied. Wow, that's the way to do it, is become satisfied over and over and over again. And what's the point of answering an email badly? It's even better, in fact, from answering it badly, is to not answer it at all. So let's spend our time feeling good rather than trying to spend our time answering an email that we're in a hurry to answer. So this is the Satipatthana. We have the body, we have the feelings. The body and the feelings work together. We see that email, we get uptight with the thought of, oh, maybe this is dangerous. Then we feel unsafe and unsecure. We gain anxiety. The anxiety starts off with a mental state in the amygdala, but it immediately starts pumping adrenaline into the body, and the adrenaline then is a chemical that the body puts off for fight or flight. But you're not going to fight with that email. You're not going to get up and run away from the email, but you've got that anxiety. Let's go deal with that anxiety directly. How do we deal with anxiety directly? Guess what? By taking a deep breath and relaxing and saying, never mind, I see that anxiety. I can see it, and I see that it came from this thought. Let me drop this thought and come back to being in a state of okay. So this is the entire teaching of the Buddha, is a very easy practice, but we need to practice it in conjunction with all four factors of the body, the feelings, the mind, and the objects of the mind. So, Karwan, what do you think?
That's of course very nice set. Dhammarato, something just happened with with the owner of my house. I had last night a little bit like a confrontation with him, but today in the morning I saw him, and the first thing I thought, before going to talk to him, let's just smile. Let's just get in a good mood first. So I just smiled, and smilingly I went to him, and everything changed. The whole mood changes. It was like everything that happened last night he forgot about, and he smiled back, and we closed it off. And yeah, but if I had just not smiled, we would have been more in that fighting mood. And yeah.
And if you had smiled at him last night,
yeah, then that would not even have happened. Yeah.
Karwan.
Yes, I don't like confrontation. I don't like the Parang because the Parang don't smile much. But if you smile at him, everything will work out. Thanks for telling us that story. So you keep practicing to smile, to be okay, to be happy. Smiling, by the way, though is not actually in the Anapanasati Sutta, smiling is a skill to be developed so that you can develop the smile, so you can smile when you need that smile. And when do you need it? When you want to fight with the landlord. That's when you need to smile. So, Sean, what do you think?
Relaxing. Thanks for the talk.
You're relaxed. Okay. And how about you, Matt? You have a thought?
Yeah, thanks for explaining the Satipatthana as the toolkit. At the end, you were giving an example about the email and how it was playing out in the body and the feelings. I wonder if you could extend the example to talk about the Sita and the Dhammas, like which pieces they are in that example or a different example.
Okay. Think of it as the Sita is like a bucket, and the Dhammanupassana is like the contents of the bucket. Okay, so they come in and out. The contents of the bucket go in and out and in and out. The Buddha gave the example of a pot that's in, let us say that the bottom is out of it. So that if you pour any Dhamma in there, it goes immediately out. Some people are like that. They call them open, but guess what? The bottom's open too, and so nothing will stick. And then the second kind of bucket would be a bucket or a pot, a clay pot, that has cracks in it. And you pour the Dhamma in, and it seeps out so that it doesn't stay. And the third kind of bucket is actually a bucket that can hold stuff, but it's already holding and it's full. And so when you try to put something new in the bucket, it doesn't get in because the bucket is already full. So what we need to do is to find a way of making some room in there. We talk about being open-minded, but the first example is that people are so open-minded that nothing sticks. Or the second kind of open-minded is that everything leaks out. And the third kind would be the closed-minded because it's already full. So what we want to do then is to empty most of that out and keep moving it out and keep cleaning until it's all pure Dhamma in there. And so anytime that a hindrance is about to be put in your pot, you don't let it. You say, no, I'm not going to put that thought in there. I'm going to just put more Dhamma in. So that's the way of thinking about it is that hindrances are like drops in a bucket. And most people are full up to here with unhappy, unwholesome, negative thoughts. And so there's not much room for the Dhamma to come in for them. But we can throw out new thoughts to keep, anytime an unwholesome thought comes up, we can throw that out and put something wholesome in, and fairly soon it begins to purify the mind. Now, the contents of the mind is actually that part which we say is part of the mind, which is referred to as sankhara, which is just a pile of junk. It's a pile of junk because we've been putting junky thoughts in the mind and they accumulate. But if you keep putting in happy, wholesome thoughts, then they will eventually, if you're doing all, cover up all of the old unwholesome thoughts that settle down to the bottom. They get stuck to the bottom of the bucket, and then they don't affect anything, and all you have is healthy, wholesome thoughts. Does that help with your understanding?
Yeah, it does. I think earlier in the talk you were also talking about how they influence each other. So that's like the unwholesome thoughts are like hot. So when they go in the bucket, they can heat the bucket up so that the mind is also kind of like the attitude is getting hotter. Or vice versa. Like if the attitude is really cooled off, then the thoughts come in, they tend to get cooled off too.
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way that you said that. Well put.
So, Brett, do you have anything to say?
Nothing to add, only that I appreciate all this information in one Sangha meeting. I'm going to definitely watch this again, and a lot of good stuff that needs to go in the glossary for this.
Good idea. Good idea. So, Alec, what do you have to say?
Nothing much. Thank you for the talk. It's just something I can do.
I'm glad that you say that. That you can do this. That's the attitude. That can do. We can do this. That's the sita of having that confidence. So, Edward, what do you have to say?
I really, really, really appreciate the talk. It's amazing to have the opportunity to spend time listening to you. I was struck last week about this idea of the dukkha is in the kind of interpretations that we make upon like reality. So all these tools and everything you're talking about, especially this idea of like, okay, making the contents of the mind Dhamma versus something unwholesome. Now, that almost could sound religious. Like you're supposed to have good Buddhist terms in your mind and not some other kind of thing. But if what we mean is hey, can you effing notice what is actually real right now around you as the constant thing to go back to and to have the mind be filled with, and that when you refer to the obstructions, which is kind of, at least for maybe an outsider or even me, kind of a vague term. Well, if the obstruction is are you not appreciating or seeing plain old reality as it is now, and that would be the hindering item to let go out of the mind and just enjoy and appreciate things as they are without all of our human, let's say, like additions that complicate things. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. All of our ideas and concepts and attitudes that we've stored up as bad habits. So, Ivan, this is your stick. What do you say? I see you turned your camera on. I mean, your mic on. Turn your camera on too.
Yeah, just to follow
There
up
you
what
go.
I was saying, isn't that basically sankharas too? But those we can just classify them as sankharas. It's funny, it's
Say that
I don't
again.
know what's
You're
happening.
breaking up.
It's not up. It's not.
There you go.
Oh, you can see. Yeah, I was myself now. Yeah, I was just trying. Oh, bad Wi-Fi. Oh, I keep breaking out. I keep breaking out. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you better now.
Yeah. No, I was saying, following what I was saying, I was trying to ask, isn't that we can call them all basically just sankharas, right? Those are just all the memories, the feeling, the belief, like all this, they are sankharas, right?
Mhm. And those sankharas are part of the sita.
Okay, okay, yeah. That's all I want to ask then. Yeah.
So, Mr. Ben, what do you have to say?
Not much, but thank you for the talk, Dhammarato. Appreciate it.
Glad you're here. Navid, what do you have to say?
Dhammarato and friends, it was a beautiful transmission. I really, really am honored to be in this Sangha.
I'm glad you're here. So, Nick, welcome. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I just thank you for the talk. I don't have any comments. It was good. It's fine.
All right. Well, practice well.
Thank you.
Practice remembering to look at what you're doing and make a change. So, Tom, what do you have to say?
Filled. I'm new to this also. There's a lot of terminology to sort out, but happy to do it.
Oh, I didn't use too much, Polly. No, but
No. Just for someone who's an absolute rookie, even 3 or 4 words is a lot. But that's why I got a lot
Brett,
of room.
maybe it would be good to listen to this again. Mikey will have it up in a day or so. So, Mikey, Why don't you finish this thing off?
Gladly. Happy we can just take things easy. Don't worry. Take a nice breath, enjoy it. Yeah, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and check out the video description and come join us here on the Dhamma Friends Discord. We have a Hangout channel. This is where we're hanging out now. And you can also, pretty much hang out in this channel anytime. In fact, would invite everyone here to go ahead and stay on the call just because we're ending the recording. Doesn't mean you have to leave. This is a great time to kind of make friends with one another and continue chatting about the Noble Dhamma, share something about the practice, perhaps. That sort of thing. We do also have a channel here on Discord for one-on-one calls. If you'd like to schedule a one-on-one call, just put a date and time there for when you'd like to have a call, and we'll have a seasoned practitioner give you a call sometime. Also, please check out the Open Sangha Foundation.org, where you can find our Sangha map, as well as many books by Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. There's also, for instance, a collection of talks by Dhammavidu. Many other cool things there on the Open Sangha Foundation website. So yeah, you can also listen to these talks on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcasting platforms. But yeah, just take it easy, friends. Don't worry, be happy. Enjoy this moment. Thank you for being here today.
Well, I have to leave now, but I hope that everybody here just stays for a while. Introduce yourself, talk to each other. Some of you might have questions about what we talked about today, and others can answer it. And so I haven't talked about it recently, but what we're doing here is developing a Sangha, which means a friendship community who is friendly with each other because they're friends with themselves. And so stay on and make some friends, make some Dhamma friends. And thank you all. And so I'll see you later.
Thanks,
See ya.
Dhammarato.
Thank you, Dhammarato.
Okay, well, bye-bye.
Thank you, Venerable Sir.